Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. Now let's get into the story. My wife, 35 of 2 years, had been working as a college professor for a few years when this story took place. She had worked hard for several years to get this job, and she had every right to be proud of herself. Her parents certainly were. She had a huge graduate and new job party with the whole family in town. We even waited to get married, per her request, so that she could ensure her dream job. This was what she was all about, and I couldn't imagine her doing anything that would jeopardize her job or our future together. But I wouldn't be here today if she didn't. She became good friends with some of her students. They were in their late 20s, so they were similar enough in age, but I did think it was a little weird that she was friends with them while also being their professor. It didn't seem like a very professional choice, but I hesitated to tell her my opinion. She actually went to some of the parties they had. As far as what she told me, it was more like a group get-together, much more chill than a party. She said they even discussed some of the lesson topics with her, because that's just how passionate and focused her students were. I just let it keep happening. I really wish I would have tried to convince her to stop mixing her dream job with pleasure, but she was so happy. She really was on top of the world and felt like she was making a difference in their lives. She always came home at a reasonable time because she didn't want to leave me alone all night. And she never went out more than 2 times a month. I knew something was wrong when she stayed out until 2 a.m. I was awake and waiting for her, and we had a fight. She said she was just helping her students, but this was unacceptable to me. I demanded to know what was really going on, but she wouldn't say anything different. I asked her not to socialize with students for a while, and she freaked out. She called me controlling and started it. She claimed to be a responsible woman that deserved to live her life freely, especially when she found someone that made her so happy. My eyes went wide. She quickly corrected herself to say something and said she was mixing up words because I was confronting her and she was tired. I was so concerned by her mistaken wording, but I didn't have it in me to argue anymore. That night, I couldn't ask her to take off work either. I wasn't sure how or when I was going to bring this up again. I knew I should, but I thought I'd just wait to see what else she was going to do for a while. Everything calmed down. She didn't stay out and only went to work and came home. It was great, but she still had to grade papers at home, and for that I left her alone to study. I then walked in on her texting someone and it made her jump out of her skin. That was weird, but I didn't draw attention to it. I thought about checking her phone later, but she had a code on it. I decided I was going to set up an opportunity for her to bring students to the house, but I'd secretly be hiding nearby. I needed to know who these people were and if something else was going on. She fell for it super quickly. As soon as I said I was going to spend an evening with my mom in the nursing home, she was thrilled. She said I was so sweet for going and offered to give me a ride and then pick me up later to throw her off. I agreed and walked back to the house. It took 20 minutes. I wasn't sure what I was going to find, but I still had trouble picturing my wife doing anything less than honorable. A few times I told myself I was crazy and started walking back to my mom, but then I turned back around again. When I got there, I could see a different car house. She expected to have all the time she needed to do whatever she wanted and then come pick me up. Seeing the mystery car fueled me and I ran to the front door. I unlocked it with shaking hands and saw the most disturbing thing I'd ever seen. My wife was having intimate with her student before either of them. I took a picture. It's a high-tech world now. I took my phone out when I saw the mystery car, so I'd be prepared to take a picture of whatever my wife was up to. If it was all good, I would have been the crazy one. But now she was. It all started to hit me after she got her pants on and her student ran outside. She started yelling God knows what while my head started pounding. I could only hear my heartbeat as thought about how our marriage was over and the future I expected to have with her was a false hope. Her Her career was over. She'd never be allowed to teach at the school again. The next school would want to know why she was fired from this school. I snapped out of it and demanded to know why she risked everything she worked so hard to build for one of the first students she ever had. She stared at me blankly and then said he asked her to hang out with him, and she didn't expect anything bad to happen. I started yelling when I said something bad has definitely happened. She brought into our house and opened her legs. She started flipping me off and screaming at me, saying it wasn't her fault and I stopped them from finishing, so it shouldn't even count. My jaw dropped. I told her she was so shockingly wrong in her logic that I couldn't even argue with her. I packed my bags and got hotel room. I didn't feel like arguing with her anymore that night about who was going to be the one to leave. It felt like I was talking to a spoiled brat that expected to get away with this because of everything she accomplished prior to it. I was not going to stick around, and I wasn't going to let her keep her job either. I filed for divorce and sent the picture to the president of the college. Just as I suspected, she hated me and could not look me in the eye at any of our future interactions. I never saw her eyes again. She went from a confident, flawless, overachieving woman to one of shame and disgrace. Her parents couldn't even believe it and actually asked me to send them the picture. I did reluctantly, but they apologized to me. My wife didn't work for any colleges in the state. After waiting a few years, she moved out of state, probably because she couldn't get a job no matter where she applied. I have started dating again, but I will not be quick to believe I know someone's personality or that they'll remain trustworthy at all times. Today's second story. In this story, Opie, married into a prosperous family business, discovers his wife's infidelity. Following her father's advice, he catches her in the act, leading to her dismissal from both marriage and business. The father-in-law supports him, offering partnership and residence in his mansion. The betrayed spouse rebuilds his life, finds a new, fulfilling relationship, and starts a family. Meanwhile, his ex-wife faces loneliness and bitterness. The tale highlights resilience, familial bonds, and the pursuit of happiness after a painful betrayal. Now let's get into the story. My wife, 37, was a business partner with her father. They were both extremely wealthy because of this, which made me 34 wealthy too. Since I married into her family, her father and I became very close, and he would show me a lot of business-related activities, so I understood them better. After 6 years of marriage, my wife started to distance herself from me. As part of her responsibilities, she would drive to clients' houses to deliver products to them and discuss upgrades. Obviously, being a well-spoken, friendly, and attractive woman helped business. My wife took this helping business notion a little too far. One day, she started to seem particularly distant from me and excited. In the weeks when she was scheduled to visit one particular client, I decided to confide in her dad about how I felt and what I noticed. He encouraged me to follow her discreetly to the client's house. I thought this was a sneaky answer from a normally straightforward guy, but I took his advice. I didn't know it was going to become the worst day of my life. I parked down the street from the house in question and watched her go in. The customer's name was Doug. According to our customer information, he wasn't married. Would that stop him from taking advantage of a married woman? Probably not. My mind was already picturing horrible scenarios, and it wasn't far off from what I was going to find. I walked up to the front door. After 15 minutes, I thought about knocking but decided not to. Keeping in mind the word sneaky, I opened the front door slowly and peeked inside, but mostly listened. I could hear faint noises coming from the second floor. It didn't sound like a business conversation was taking place. I walked upstairs. My heart was racing, and I started recording on my phone. As I got closer to one particular door, I could hear them going at it. I opened the door and found my wife having intimate with Doug. It was my worst nightmare coming true. My wife immediately turned to look at who was barging in on them and started screaming when she saw it was me. She tried to shield her body from the camera, but it was too late. It saw everything. She screamed for me to stop recording and let her get clothes on. I continued recording as I left Doug's house and got in my car. It recorded my sobs and angry words as I drove to my father-in-law's because didn't know where else to go. When I got there, my father-in-law acted like a real dad to me. He listened intently as I told him what happened. He watched the video, but only to the point where he could hear moaning. He believed everything I told him, and better yet, he said he was on my side. 20 minutes later, my wife arrived there too. She walked straight into the kitchen, finding us at the dining room table. Before she even sat down, her father asked her how long she'd been seeing Doug. I looked at him in surprise, just like she did, because I wasn't expecting him to ask that question. I thought for sure she couldn't have done this more than once. She tried to say it was only this one time, but her dad told her he looked at the travel logs. He knew she was going to Doug's house way more often than necessary for the past 11 months. My jaw dropped and I looked at her expectantly. She didn't know what to say. She tried to speak and protect her image, but it didn't make sense. At one point, it sounded like she was defending her actions by claiming it would help business. Her father offered no sympathy when he told her she was fired. She let out a weird noise of shock and started stammering. She wanted to keep her job, but what could she possibly say? I had her on video sleeping with Doug, and it was clear this wasn't the only time she did it. Besides the betrayal, she dealt me. Her father told her this was not the behavior he expected from his business partner or daughter. The real whammy that made my wife plead forgiveness was when he announced that he was going to disown her. It didn't matter how much she apologized or what she said. Her father's mind was made up. She couldn't live in our marital home because her father's name was on it, and he didn't want her there. And she couldn't live at his house either. She became homeless, living in her Audi, a nice car, but not a home. Once, when she called her dad crying, he told her she had 11 months, the duration of the affair, to stop and reconsider what she was doing because she didn't. He finds her despicable. He finished by saying I was lucky. I found out the truth and got away from her. Her father gave me a choice. I could live in the marital home and it would become mine, or I could move in with him. He owned a mansion that was about the size of 2 houses put together. The 2 halves were connected by one long hallway. I knew I would have privacy, but most of all I considered him family and needed his emotional support. I decided I would continue to live in the marital home, but would still visit his place from time to time. He also offered me a partnership for the family business he runs, which I gladly accepted. I've been working with him for 7 years now since all this happened. Since then, I was also able to meet a new, amazing woman who is now my wife. We have 2 kids together and life couldn't be any better. As for my ex, her outlook on life isn't too great. I can tell because of her pessimistic posts on Facebook and the occasional bitter message she sends me. I just show them to my wife, and we have a good laugh about it. She may have some money still, but what she doesn't have is anyone around her that loves or cares for her as I did.